4-0 debate at the 2015 TOC, so round 5, between Jackson Lallas from Brentwood and Varun from Torrey Pines / Del Mar. Varun affirmed, Jackson negated, and after every speech we're going to give commentary on the technical efficiency of the AF, the perceptual dominance of, not the AF rather, of the speech, the technical, let me start that again. We're going to talk about the technical efficiency of the speech, we're going to talk about the perceptual dominance of the speech, we're going to talk about the strategic value of the speech, and what that speech accomplished and what the next speech needs to accomplish as well. I would highly recommend flowing along and then taking notes of the commentary in between speeches. And at the end, we're going to give a redo drill assignment that you can do at home and compare to the redo that will be posted online that my student Kirk will do. So we're going to start with the 1AC. I'm ready whenever you are, Kirk.
Okay, hold on. Let me just start. Okay. Plantex State governs the District of Columbia within the United States.
Sorry about that. There was a little glitch in our speakers. Shouldn't happen again.
Plantex State governs the District of Columbia within the United States, requiring employees to pay restaurant workers living wage during code reading by reserved by the clarifying intent USFG overrides to T violation assignment. Employees of the restaurant they deserve by paying them a living wage. I value morality. To determine the right answer to any question, first we consider what makes an answer right or wrong. Second, the best way to determine the correct answer. Studying calculus may help you understand what makes one answer correct. As long as the question in Mathematica, we are likely to correct answer. Medical research may give you the chills to know what my symptoms mean, but consulting a doctor is still more reliable. This is a distinction between analytic and regulative epistemology. Analytic seeks to enumerate this condition by which one can be said to satisfy the reductive criteria of knowledge. Regulative epistemology recognizes the plurality of epistemic questions to itself, how would you practically make decisions. It's a skill, a question of intellectual virtue skills, which should be implicated to think well within Robert. The triviality of standard epistemology due in part of preoccupation with scaffold. One can access your two hands against a little less worried about the structure of DNA. Epistemology most productive moments skeptical words and look what an ordinary practitioner of science, religion, humanistic, and critical knowledge. And the emphasis on virtue has the potential for the epistemology in its rightful place, and they continue. Analytic epistemology introduces theories of knowledge, rationality, but regulative epistemology is trying to generate guidance for epistemic practice. Regulative epistemology is strong and practical, social rather than theoretical challenges, law comments. Nobody's made anything by hearing rules. You may well make a good painter by lecture. Virtue epistemology focuses on the practitioner's character of the education oriented. Regulative epistemology is not aimed at fighting disagreement. Virtue's broad mind still has exchange. The formation and intellectual agents of business of schools. They're the chief educator of character. But educational activity should pursue intellectual virtues. Virtues such as humility, forbearance, recognize cognitive limitations, ethics, authority of experts, who are authority to trust, not move away from authorities, but Robert 2. We tend to focus on lessons found in cooperative. This is a factor to find development. We depend on unsupported testimony. Now, this is other children not starting on cognitive life, nor can delve subject to they need to function. The students is about belief formation based upon given natural limitations, tendency to show start suspicion, testimony can be epistemic arrogance, insisting having a possession all the evidence supporting their beliefs to be paralyzing intellectual paranoia, a hybrid individuals but unrealistic and detrimental to cognitive function, intellectual humility, comparative deliberation, and on warranty to look at suspicion for any word and testimony. The shared appeal to qualified moral authority for all judgment authority is impossible given the framework warrants the heuristic is to demonstrate more clarity and has confusion. This is virtue, even while society says more fail. To clarify, first is epistemology. The best way to convert the two more principles of testimony, listening to doctors does make you healthier, more likely to take healthy action, listen to your doctor. Alternative principles are not competitive. The principle by which the answer reasoning is already considered by AC experts. The answer is not enough to counter evidence anymore. The angle is the counter into study. Second, testimony is inescapable. You accept the testimony author's description of the world. The judge accepts your testimony and believes in your arguments about the other. You accept the testimony to determine when and where to debate. You can't make reason as that seven testimony authority by reasonable assumptions. Third, the framework recognizes the epistemic limitation competitive intent means that the authority better assess the capacity of depression and method to adjust it. People experience depression dedicate life to fighting with better recognizing we need to consider diverse perspective. But just not rely on my math friends. He says that math debate, so using the experts synthesize opinions of others in an inclusive way. They'll be more charitable than I have respect for the standard. First, we cannot wait until we have the right ethical methodology, but cannot be confident that studying ethics is ethical instead of recognizing authority those better situated moral standards. Second, it's about the right obligations of academic reflection. First, all development of such academic framework peace with the prior values that are not be derived as the value choose to go to scholarship. Second, one cannot drive ethics something non-ethical, because you have to either A, principle is the proper way to make the derivation, which most of the hidden non-derived moral premise, or view something as entirely the way the world is, not the way it ought to be. Reader. We can't understand ethics in nature of the ethical between the rationality of ethics, problems between the rationality of all we do, play games, good, and very regular being able to use the world to spend activities contradictory. You need the rationality of ethics involved similar and the way we justify part of our lives is not noble in itself, and it is to us living as we live, so expenditure and time is taken. Given that ethics presupposes this is demonstrated to be ethical excellence versus normal conclusions, Lewis factor for gender. There's no variety of contradictions development of the product, there's no nation of outside, all the advocating alterations the interests of actors and poet, and the mothers and make alterations their changes on the spirit of language they work from within. Only those who understand this to modify the working spirit remains only they know the origin of the outsider knows nothing. From within time comes the authority to modify. Confucius says those fall different ways. The council Aristotle said, with those well pronounced, study ethics, corpus starting point is invisible. Only those practices have understanding that perfect is such a lawful and all law is sufficient. Intention. The Pope occupies a unique position of authority. He is carefully vetted morally, does give a position of millions. The Pope is in charge of the Council of Cardinals and some give position to access examples to others. All Pope directs all academic and practical insights on those familiar only the instructor of particular. Pope does all time to do all the social service. Pope Francis presents examples of billions of acts of justice. Obama. Pope Francis moved as a message when in the marketplace. A deep symbol of proud embracing the sick, ministering the homeless, child lives out, abuse, tuberculosis, poverty, and inequality, come with peace. The least of these is tonic for sin and glacier, affirms Campbell and Livingston. Pope Francis reminds us that money must serve not rule and work. Instead of fighting issue happiness and minimum living dignity, freedom, responsibility, supporting family, educating children, developing human potential. Who is encouraging corporations to work with living wage. Francis first supported living wage is fraud. Francis first advocated minimum wage. First recognized his passion need to pay American workers living wage fairly, where standards like statutory minimum wage. She was guided by an incredible moral compass Downey. First in his vote of public service, mother changed American business. First period of life, average income lives of American working people, judging around family responsibility. First ideas became the most important social welfare legislation in the nation. Unemployment competition, how labor laws. First versus doctor laws and refugees, safety, first social security. First study economic boom bust. He advocated the minimum wage. Conservative ideology tried to walk forward, but she would not give up. Thomas Paris is a moral inspiration and fought against Justice Corn. Paris is a decision returning general civil rights away. Often eviscerated under Bush. Paris revitalized the matters of rights and legal challenges discrimination against gays. The vision of record breaking investigation police to be sports, agreements to the first season of Charter Paris. Helped overhaul police force, to amendments of large conviction and neonazis murders. He targeted financial institution for discrimination for closing out the recovery to fair lending unit, and the Morgan Fair settlement is discovery from Medicare fired up the bureaucracy, one of the CBR posts. Mark the part there. It's not about economic prosperity, but ensuring the workers have a voice. NBC quotes Paris. The values part is the moral contract of to ensure we have a social contract with America. Low wage and the choice not the necessity. When you're a tip worker, we have no guarantee of how to work will come in. That's colossally unfair. This is what a federal minimum wage is too low. The tip worker wage results in tip workers taking on the chin. There's no one magical. There are many things we need to do. We take action including raise the minimum wage. Just make sure we keep people to please make sure the workers have a voice. When you don't have a place that's much more vulnerable. And Martin is a pioneer in figuring racial legislation. When you know, presenting examples of Indian freedom fighters, can you understand the importance of having minimum wage change? We never know crucial civil rights in nature enforcement and wage and extended because millions in retail trade, laundry, hospital, restaurants, logging, still work for starvation, living the living wage is the right of all working Americans. Ought to be first. Use the billion drop here and negative TS with the bright line of internal structure be clear on the stories of the plaintiffs and framework exhibiting the same apps and CTS. Each one's multiple different interpretations of the topic of the app is a blind attitude between each of two different interpretations. All these theories don't come to me. Trying to say groundless. People accuse the topic of voting on a theory alone, just clarifying negative interpreting the reasonable thoughts, be some spectacle, clarifying cross examination. If you answer as a brain problem, you could fairness violations, so you're overcome laws of substance education, reading theory, and it's important for school funky activity, and the only lasting impact of it. That way, fairness is only instrumental to achieving, otherwise, it's like a quantity valuable. If you see one that can't retain the negative entity direction, all the strategies that be by EC, give your child a winning run. Keep on its substitutes is equal to punish the average to be at FC. I brought in on high quality apple preserving neck run. You knew this apple was coming right every round. I asked you if there are any answers you wanted, and you said no. You wanted better to be the answer, here to be our RBF and win more often to a counter, but keep responsibility. The year again positively or only you respond against factor 2. He differences between an unequal playing field. Second, the universe is infinite foster. First, it is identified universe patient infinite at every point in time. It is an infinite number of galaxies. Commonness and substitute the universe observed. The universe is 0 point infinitesimal fraction. Cosmologically, for universe is infinite. All produce probably the world is infinite, and the human soul is immortal. Production of the high state is the necessary object will determine the moral law. Moving forward, the condition of high state is more this is therefore possible of this object.
Okay. Every
Okay, so in terms of how this app is read, it's very easy to follow, right? And the reason why is because Varun makes it a point to pause here and there and to make the tagline super clear and to give a second to catch up. So Varun is also a fantastic model for how you can clearly read an app.
Sure.
We've seen models now of apps that have been read where they're very hard to follow and apps that have been read that are very easy to follow. Like, for example, Rom's app was pretty hard to follow.
Right, yeah. To see it and pause. And even though the judge kept saying he was like...
Right.
Yeah.
And so Danny's app was also super easy to follow.
Sure, yeah.
So was Bob's app, right? And so it shows you that how you read the app can really change the way the judge flows or does not flow the app. So it's not necessarily a question of speed, it's a question of where the pauses and the breaks happen when the app is being read.
Right.
Okay. So it's important for you to emulate that when you're giving speech. So let's talk about the substance of the app.
What was the standard text?
I think the standard text is like something about testimonies. I didn't catch an explicit standard text.
Yeah, me either.
But this app is, so the first thing that's interesting is it's a plain text.
Right.
And it's specific to the District of Columbia and living wages to restaurant workers. So it's hyper-specific. It specified a country, and more than that, it specified a state.
Right.
It also specified a sector in which living wages are going to be given.
Sure.
The resolution doesn't have any of that specification.
Right.
So
that opens up an opportunity for Jackson to run theory about the hyper-specification of the app.
right, but there's also the argument at the bottom of the app that CX checks. So Jackson definitely needs to ask about the hyper-specificity of the app. Right? So that's definitely one thing that's the immediate thing that's noteworthy is why is this app so hyper-specific? Given that he's not deriving any offense off the hyper-specificity.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, why? Yeah.
Well, we'll look at it, but I think a big part of the reason why it's so hyper-specific is because in a util debate, if somebody reads a util standard and you defend this hyper-specific plan text, then presumably most of their util offense is no longer relevant.
Yeah, but I think that Varun can hedge his bets that he can win the util. He can win the framework debate against Jackson.
Right. So I think that I'm not sure. Maybe it's to prove that CX is a valuable check because he's willing to shift. I'm really not sure why this AF is so hyper-specific.
Sure.
I think also it opens itself up to a really interesting theory violation, which is that if AFs read a plan text, they need to derive offense from the limitation that they placed on the resolution.
Sure. Yeah.
It can't be arbitrarily specified if you're not deriving offense from it.
Yeah, that's good interpretation. Right?
Yeah. So this AF is a moral testimonies AF, which means that it has a starting point of a long conversation about regular epistemology versus analytical epistemology, most of which I was not really following. It didn't really make a ton of sense to me. But the bottom line is ultimately that humans are not very good at making ethical decisions and creating ethical rules, and that there are a select few who are, and that these people are like the voices of our generation or of previous generations. People like Martin Luther King, like Aristotle, like Confucius, etc. And those are the people we should listen to.
Sure.
So, in another sense, this AF could be construed as a giant appeal to authority, but it's done in a very justified way. Right? It's an appeal to authority specifically on the ethics debate.
Right.
So, that's something else that's worthy of being noted, is that this AF is different from the traditional frameworks that you normally see, right? So this brings about several questions then in terms of weighing underneath the AF. If one moral authority affirms and one negates, how do we weigh between the two?
Yeah.
Do we weigh based on how strong their testimony was, how much it links back to the resolution, how much of a moral authority they were? How would we decide who's more of a moral authority, right? Questions like that, I think, are questions that need to be asked and really talked about, because it influences whether or not the negative will engage the AF substantively on case.
Right.
Okay.
Wait, for your theory interp, what was the theory interp that if you run like a plan text, offense must be derived directly from the plan instead of like broader resolution. What would be the standards that you would use?
Ground, because a plan text arbitrarily limits my util ground.
Sure.
So if you read Deont with, let's say he read Deont with give living wages to restaurant workers in Somalia, right? He could have read Deont without that.
Right.
But now that he read specifically, or she read specifically that plain text, all my util offense ground is gutted.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it sort of pigeonholes my ability to engage in a framework debate.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
Or I guess pigeonhole is the wrong word. It undercuts my ability to, or it undercuts my incentive to engage in a framework debate. That's the best way to put it. Okay. Back to the substance of the AF, though.
Yeah.
In cross-examination, there definitely also needs to be a conversation about how to weigh underneath the standard. Okay. So the last thing that's worthy of being noted is the underview.
Right.
The underview preempts two things, which should give you a hint as to how Jackson is as a debater. One is it's a ton of theory preamps, right? Like a solid 45 seconds to like a minute worth of theory preamps.
D justifications for like drop the argument on T.
Yeah, so reasonability on T in theory, CX is a check.
Oh, reasonability.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Then there's also the universe is infinite and human souls are immortal to also hedge against the util debate.
Oh, sure.
So these would presumably be extinct, like util triggers in terms of presumption and permissibility. Now, right. What's interesting is this AF doesn't have any presume AF, so I'm not really sure that he would use it as a trigger as much as just a framework takeout. I think Varun would go for util is incoherent, not I concede util, but infinite pleasure and pain means that there is no difference in pleasure and pain in the AF and neg world, which means you presume AF.
Right.
Make sense? Okay. I think that the theory spikes definitely need to be clarified by Jackson.
Right.
He doesn't want to miss anything, right? So it's clear as this 1AC is read that the AF thinks it's much stronger at the framework debate than the neg,
Right.
and the AF does not want to engage in the theory debate with the neg, or at least would like to set up the theory debate in a strategic way. So the AF probably expects the negative to try to engage in the theory debate, and also the AF thinks that the most likely framework the neg will read would be util. These are all things that an objective third-person bystander should be able to understand and see. Okay, so we've isolated 3 big conversations that need to have in CX, that need to be had in CX. One is, what is the point of the plain text, and is the AF going to defend that exclusively? Second is, how do we weigh underneath the standard? And third is clarification of all the theory spikes.
Sure,
Making sure you don't miss anything. Okay, so let's listen to CX.
CX?
Yeah.
There are 2 arguments in this ad that I find particularly troubling.
Okay.
The first came at the top of the plan text when you said that you will reserve the right to clarify your advocacy. The second came in the underview when you said that you'll clarify theory violations in CX. Is this a CX check?
No, I don't require you to do that.
So what if I run theory without it being checked? Can you extend that offensively?
No, not offensively.
Okay.
But I say at the very top, not when 6 minutes of the AC was read, at the very top that I'll change my advocacy to these 2 things.
So
There's no issue of you not knowing, for example, or having your strategies to cut time allocation.
let's
There's no
talk about the
requirement.
analysis from Simon. Your plan text is that state governments in the District of Columbia with the United States will require employers to pay a living wage.
Yeah.
Right? Where does Simon say that all state governments in the District of Columbia ought to do this?
I think it's fair for me to spec the actor because a lot of people
Okay.
don't address the
So you think it's fair to spec the actor,
But
but
remember
Simon
that-
doesn't say anything.
But remember, if you want me to change the advocacy, I'll change the advocacy immediately.
How is
So
that not a
I said that-
CX checks argument?
This is not a requirement. I'm saying that I'm willing to at the very top of the AC.
Alright, what is the AF's advocacy? What else can you change?
I'll defend the plan text, or I'll
Right,
defend
but
the
my
USFP,
question is,
or I'll
what is
defend
the
Torrey.
what is your interpretation of an advocacy? What are arguments that you can and cannot change in cross-examination given the
Only
advocacy?
the ones I say at the very top of the.
So only your post-fiat advocacy, not theoretical.
What do you mean? I don't know. What's a theoretical advocacy?
Like stance on like issues in terms of how you weigh back to the AC and other arguments like that.
No, I can't change those things. I'm just talking about the plan text specifically. This app is not contingent on a particular plan text. This is a solvation to
Okay.
spec. If you want me to change, I'll change. I think it's pretty clear.
So, Varun.
Yeah.
You've heard the municipality before. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Right. So I'll
In the
defend
plan's
Torrey.
current extrapolation,
Yeah.
does it violate that shell?
In the plan's current extrapolation.
Yeah. You are giving a living wage to all workers, correct?
Yes, but since I'll defend
Okay,
Torres.
but in the plan's
means
current
you're-
extrapolation, there's a violation, right?
Yeah, but I say at the very top. Do you want me to change?
Right,
it?
right. That lies in
The
CX checks.
offense is not. No, it's at the very top. of the
Okay,
app.
it's at the very top.
These
I
are
mean,
the two
I know
things
it's there
that
because
are
that's the
changed
first thing I
by
brought up in
advocacy.
cross-examination. Why do we prefer so your reasonability and drop the argument on T, does that only apply to T, or which arguments apply to theory as well?
I think taking interpretive stances is not unique to T. For example, I have to say things. For
Okay.
example, it also the top of class argument obviously applies to both.
So the C and D points, if I'm not running theory on your advocacy, how do those apply?
If you read the city T, then you would be. But I also
Right.
think that
But if it's not a theory interpretation, that's your advocacy, would those arguments
I
apply?
think the reactivity argument also would probably apply here because I still read the AC point,
Okay.
irrespective of whether or not I'm taking an advocacy stance or other stance.
Cool.
Okay, so this cross-examination was entirely exclusively focused on theory. That means, hint, hint, the one end is going to read theory, right? Now, I think that the conversation that was being had about CX checks was a conversation the neg needed to have, but the neg didn't get what it wanted.
Right. Jackson wanted a theory violation on CX checks, but Varun was like, no, this isn't CX checks. Like, it's not a requirement that you have to do.
Right. It's just a CX solves argument. So it's not you have to check in CX. It's an argument that says you probably should check in CX.
So it's
it
not
would be a
necessary.
good thing for you to check in CX. So that's the first big conversation that happens. The next big conversation that happens is like about how the plan text functions. So like I think that the best question Jackson asked is, you've obviously heard the municipality T, right? In your plan's current extrapolation, would it violate municipality T? And Varun says, yeah, but I would change it immediately if you want me to,
Sure.
right? And so then Jackson tries to use that to construct the CX checks violation.
Right.
So this is a really good CX to try to think of better questions Jackson could have asked to establish some type of violation. Right?
Sure.
Now, at the end of this CX, it's clear that Varun has stood his ground and he has not given up some sort of violation.
Right.
I think that in terms of perceptual dominance, both debaters were
Yeah,
pretty dominant.
They were pretty equal in perceptual dominance.
Right. I think Jackson asks good questions. He asks pointed questions.
Yeah, and Varun like stood his own.
Right. I also really like the way Jackson started CX, right? Like, there are two arguments that I find particularly troubling. First is at the top, and the second is at the bottom, right? And then he follows it up with, is this a CX checks, right?
Okay.
I think the follow-up question could have been something like, does this mean the AC advocacy can shift in cross-examination?
Oh, okay.
Right? And then your interp can be something like, the AC advocacy must be set in stone after the reading of the 1AC. There can be no possibility of shifting in cross-ex.
And the way that Varun was contextualizing it probably means that he could have shifted in cross-examination. Like, I'll change, or maybe not even in cross-examination, that he'll just change it like after the reading of 1AC, which is even worse. Yeah.
Right. And so the way that the interp I just said was formulated, there's no way Varun can meet it. Because in CX, he gives a violation where he says, I'll change it immediately if you'd like me to.
Sure. Yeah.
And the point is, the 1AC needs to take a firm stance. It can't change its stance.
Right. Yeah.
Make sense? Now, what's the value of Varun being so concessionary in terms of changing his advocacy as opposed to taking a very firm stance?
So he doesn't. He avoids T violations. Yeah.
Okay, so Varun is not trying to have a theory debate with Jackson. Like,
Yeah,
it
Varun
would
wants
be
to
his
pick-
preference to avoid it.
Yeah. Varun wants to pigeonhole Jackson into a framework debate.
Right. In Varun's ideal world, the neg is substantive.
Right.
Okay. So, do you see how there's a strategic gameplay happening here?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah? And the AF is trying to get the neg to play on its terms, and the neg is trying to get the AF to play on his own terms.
Yeah.
So this is what we mean by debate is a chess game, where both debaters are trying to get the debate to shift onto the level that they would be best at.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're the negative, what would you do?
In the one end.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely answered the reasonability stuff at the bottom, and then I don't think I would have thought of that interpretation that you just gave in prep, but like if I definitely thought of that, I would layer that, and then plus I read the municipality's key to like show as like, oh, he tried to shift out of this, it proves the abuse.
So you would read CX checks plus municipalities to show that he proves the abuse on municipalities?
Yeah.
Now, why would you waste 2.5 to 3
okay.
minutes of the one end proving a violation?
Okay, yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm just curious. Why would you?
I don't know, because like I feel like Varun would make like I meet arguments on the CX check on CX checks.
Yeah, Varun probably would make I meets, but I think that you can probably hedge against that. I don't know. Well, let's see what happens. My bigger question is, what would you do substantively?
Substantively,
How would you engage this app?
I mean, if I would probably go for like util with the overview type arguments, because Varun is definitely going to beat me on the line by line, like on the framework debate, and then like so what it's similar to what Pranav did, and then I would answer the underview at the bottom. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I don't think I would do that. I think I would try to uplayer via a K. And just avoid the util debate altogether.
Okay.
Because Varun is so practiced and skilled at frameworking out of util that I think that that's just a debate I probably won't ever win.
Sure.
Right?
That's right. Yeah.
So we have a disapproval or a disagreement over how you would go about conducting the actual debate, right? In terms of substance.
Sure.
Okay, well, let's listen to the one end and see what happens then.
5 minutes starting now.
So first the right?
Yeah. And I might address like one other thing really quickly on AC substance. All right, is everyone ready to go?
Yes.
Interpretation AC cannot require the negative clarified one AC theory cross-examination and or asking negative check theory interpretation cross-examination and or read the AC theory specs that says I'm open to accepting negative rather than reasonable solve abuse and all clarified cross-examination. B is a violation. I regularly recommend from the text AC you can never meet my interpretation. You also reading CF checks are you said you would accept negative interpretations. My rule for debate would say you can never comply with another negative interpretation. You always have to defend what's in the ACC. It's the standard thing to have the CF checks let you have an opportunity to change the position of fair debate after reading. You want to say letting the AC flip over to the original position not fair to say that at least yeah, checking what's theory interpretation you do not concede defending who is debating into the correct false. The virtual exclusive interpretation you debate in front line the ones you defend also links the strategies gap. Interpreting AC differently based on who are which debating or which artificially that is possible. And often skill strengths from the AC preemptively destroys next time next. Politically respond to shot try to speak to the friend's guide. And this vision I get formula strategy balance B, theoretical round C, and checks are neatly adapted to round 1, the app and side step, theoretical issues cross animation change bunch of abusive arguments, the app and change, claim that an improper rather abusive arguments in the AC in the negative to interpret the app argument to you, encourage abuse to come more innocuous to CX and check this deny me, and all the actions in my recourse with you. I can't write you in our I don't check the first page line, but you still applies to 2 errors and apps. I don't check the app, apps in the first page, you can go crazy, and the one error makes severance, and severance or change and modify so it's on the unclear 3, the meaning of check is fair and code less than negative tries to check the wrong definition affirmative, to the 70 change arguments that explain how the negative is sufficiently checked for the affirmative, you would rhyme with qualitative better second, compare the next argument they have, then use the prep the discourse advantage, big theory, the Brentwood and versus X, finally they follow abuse and God construct offense theory C, is value CX cross, X is the loss are beta between cross examination position clarifying what the app defending you, only get an education will refer, but you could examine your opponent and question him. Also, no reason we need to use safety clarification. You have to clarify what defending the AC and 5 6 key education, my ability to ask good question, one of the most unique skills, your really helps the rest of life, fairness, a lot they have to waste, negative 6 time, keeps the neck from getting possession. C, vote, under the debate, exact debate, because no one's lost its theory, education is as beneficial as substance education debate, debaters get to defend decisions they make in the round and gain unique interaction between strategy, fairness, where both activities set rules to be there. No trade-off between theory and substantive education. Drop the debater one dropping argument incentivized abuse by making low risk 50% incentivized filter against multiple views for arguments, force me to run through each have cancel when they're on key. The various should have access to human recourse. 2, dropping the debater's vectoring when I run through and after respect or after theoretical paradigm issues because that shows my ability to run other theory arguments around which means they're locking me out of checking abusing other ways which invokes a severe form of abuse or form of abuse. So it has to be a voting issue. Oh no, RBI 1 to the RBI for credit because one run through by the one if I had a chance to win off the key defender. This is especially bad because a lot of debaters get away with abuse for they using one of the key defenders to ensure that I have access to my recourse. 2nd, RBI should have watched the period. They turn to and counter interpretation office green by the time period time debaters and win rights being just be fair to get educational through to do it. Also competing interpretation was reasonability like special reason require opportunity to judge about the round key defenders to ensure that the right side of the flow not needs to judge 2. Reasonability lets debater make nuances of what the world actually looks like theoretically not possible or community interpretations you or else the text interpretation. This is the same reason why our plan and counter the text absolutely should have less debaters win the trickery instead of fail go. These AC theory effects as an overview reject reasonability guidelines one thing getting net in British fish will make a actual way that otherwise all the violence are all doesn't mean that which means I have multiple units of the theory rate destroying recourse to their arbitrary lines of the same draw to exclude interpretations reasonably guidelines and advice to ignore the substance theory rates that a clash on multiple legitimate interpretations. First, we're late on the topic of the amount of legitimate interpretation limiting you have several months to commit. Your friend you have also turned like flexible no reason debate should be served through. 2nd term key topical education to understand the correct way to interpret topic and debates and use the best way to determine your understanding because it's you can see will get 3. If the number of time means you can check out you cherry picking should be able to defend a standards on a text factor on necessary first if exposure what theory first experimental the first way to do this after why there's something which no reason should be often 2nd. If the 2nd crossify the theory education that's good at substance education means no. In fact, I can frivolous theory which we can it's much on from doing a theory debate which is no trade up trade which with no trade up or no abuse on frivolous theory 5. We do frivolous theory interpretation should be easy to beat back on the fairness debate so there's no reason to reject it on. Your number 2 point I'm not running topicality so you have no with your arguments on that on your D point we should go back to substance abuse first. First my theory shows prerequisite when I think on substance abuse claims because the question whether I have access on the theory around 2nd turn your substance abuse needs to be valuable otherwise you could exclude the negative interpretation and framing the debate. AC debate is fairly prevent me from coming back on your RBI argument. 1 turn you kill normally decide if you force me to find a flawed interpretation you I think your counter interpretation is correct in the world. I mean RBI I have to always do my interpretation because otherwise I lose the round which means even I think you're correct delays it delays correct in the morning. 2nd best question whether or not the RBI is itself condone which the RBI question answer either and then if you reject the respect from the ACA just for theoretical flash etc. Classical my interpretation to whether or not your rules good you are incentivized to extend slides B because of chilling factor theory because I have to answer all these theories by the working as they were on office in the Greek course and theory debate then go really quickly the RBC AC coded with number 3, that is how its framework is best to solve oppression. This is episode implementation argument 1. This doesn't interact with capitalism. I'm reading cafe. You don't see why you have to also cap. Second, even we can always say like cap is always bad. You don't need an expert to tell us that cap is bad. Cafe explains it so. A is the link with the second off. Wage labor is the hard capitalism. The capitalist portion is grounded wage labor. It's not time from workers. Mental wage. It's capitalist form of coercion of the capitalist workers. Don't need means production today. Let's work with those who means production. The labor conversation is the appearance. We need to exchange. The capitalist is only paying me for ability to work in that. If I reproduce myself awake and steers that relation of the capitalist role and pay the minimum amount of me to reproduce myself. This also takes up the firm because it's mutually exclusive with resisting capitalism. Wage labor is the defining feature of the capitalist system. So the firm is impossible. B is the impact class workers must converse capital increase. So just subject position and structurally promotes racism and gender discrimination. Colorfully, classic device one side of large division includes the state adverse regulation, create racist change and relation there. So no true resolution racism so only class study stands dark and gender quality legislative way. The class study clearly varies racial gender and ethnic question of states. What's that one major class on whether the ruling class is the way it states. Problems with class of racial laws, the domination nature of fact women the fact side of my means, relating society is the other C's, but alternative framing the alternatives and gross movement towards a socialist society and not a pure rejection of capitalism. Advocating socialism means to solve problems shunter commercial society is defined by regulation of property with the commercial society is defined by property and regulation of property by private social society is exactly makes usual matter when control and production is vested in central authority affairs. Long as it belongs to the public sphere, our term is not to suggest that the central authority is absolutely like all initiative presented to rule and order to commit capitalism effectively must reject it and resist every instance herald destroying. Capitalism requires great facilities strategy is not in order to something inside attacking the gunning with science to replacing with something better capitalists, which do not possibly so much as rejected this also cut the card this is the purpose which reconciliation like capitalism will continue on harm us long we capitalists can structure continue our ability over the reject risk or replace the system and we must challenge capitalist policies to make order to counteract the law direction academics Harvey. The Russian critical thought is it creates a legible situation for you to engage with more reflection under the university and could continue progressing news course on reading class economic actual political theory schools so we had a course or two of this as the crisis was I think the great occur not structures is functional only of the new generation will present to clarify this incentive on changing that's the role of outside of resisting capitalism in multiple ways to determine like off direct usually the after presentation or anti-capitalism link may back to the all proven capitalism way that TAC we way which crucial metrics such as various discovery etc. of capitalist ideology also comes for the act one I'm talking about the role of the value the role of value uploaders the AC's role of value philosophy design was first two I'm critical of the assumptions in the AC of our current academia when the announcement of Harvey that's the reason why we can look at the current academic theory because that academic theory is capitalist.
Okay. I think technically the first thing that should be noted is Jackson is fantastic.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
He gets through the AF theory spikes
Really fast. Yeah.
really fast and comprehensively and gives himself multiple arguments against each of them.
Right.
He wastes zero time there. Right? And so the strategic value of the 1AC, including those spikes, has been minimized by the way that the 1N handled them. The second, I think, technical note should be that even though Jackson is really fast, like he's at like Ram Prasad levels of fast, right? I think he's a tiny bit slower than Ram, but he's like pretty up there in terms of speed.
Sure.
He's easy to follow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, and so the reason why is because Jackson makes sure that he takes a second to pause and that he explains what's happening and which arguments are that he's going for. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
I also think Jackson has mastered how to sort of vary his tone a little bit, such that no one ever like stops listening, and he'll like emphasize the parts of an argument he definitely wants you to catch.
Okay.
I'm not really sure how to teach that though, so that's just something to note and try to emulate. But I have yet to devise a way to like get you to read like that, so I'm not really sure. Yeah. So now let's talk about it substantively.
He followed the exact strategy that you said that to up there. That was probably a better strategy too. Yeah, my strategy was pretty dumb to like engage here, moving on like the framework here. Yeah, up layer is probably the better strategy here.
Okay, and why is that? By the way, come sit here so that way you come closer to the mic.
Yeah.
So the reason why up layering here was better than framework is
you get to eliminate the value of the one we see.
Exactly, and so now Varun can't leverage the AF as effectively against the second layer that Jackson has as he could have if Jackson had read Utah.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So strategically, the 1N made a commitment here that was really smart.
Sure. Yeah.
It now has two legitimate ways out of the debate. Right. If theory does not go well for him at the end of the 1AR, he can definitely go for the K.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and notice how he isolated the only potential argument that would interact on the AC framework with the K, and explicitly responded to it.
I think it'd be better for Jackson if he clarified in cross-examination, like if I read a K of your assumptions, like what spikes can interact, what app spikes can interact with that.
Right, and I think that the better way to ask that question is just straight up, if I read a cap K, what arguments in the app would interact?
Oh yeah, I think I need to get myself to be more straight up in asking.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think just being honest about what you're going to read is the better way to roll.
Sure.
So, I think the other really big picture note here to write down is the order of the 1N. The 1N went theory, AC, K.
Yeah, presumably, yeah. I think that was really strategic. Like, presumably, he had more arguments that he could have made on the K, but he needed to, for sure, to get through the theory spikes first.
Exactly. And so, how many rounds have you seen where the neg drops a theory spike that the app had because it just runs out of time at the end?
A lot.
Right? And so, changing the order of your 1N, where you deal with the theory spikes before you get to the second layer you're going for, be it the framework layer or case turns or a K, is really smart.
Yeah.
And so, this was strategically a very, very smart 1N. He has two legitimate ways out, and both of them are pretty well constructed.
Yeah.
And there's no like easy drops that the 1AR can go for on either of those two layers out.
Right, yeah. So the Varun has to engage pretty well with the arguments on the layers.
Okay, so now let's talk about cross-examination. What would be the 1AR's goal to establish in CX?
I would definitely try to get a violation so I can have offense on theory. Like, does K or theory come first and do, like, isolate that. And then...
So real quick. So the first thing is trying to figure out how it's going to engage theory, right?
Right, yeah.
So then after that, you want to figure out K or theory first.
Uh-huh.
Okay, then what else?
I would want to clarify the mutual exclusivity arguments on the K debate, why it can't perm.
Yeah. Okay. Why can't the K be permed?
Why can't the K be permed? And then depending on if I'm going for a link turn strategy or impact turn strategy on the K, I would want to clarify either the link or the impact, and then that's it. Yeah.
Okay. And for me, I would also clarify some of the warrants on theoretical ground.
Sure.
Because I missed a couple of them.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so let's listen to how CX goes.
But like, Jackson handed the Varun the paper of the.
That's true.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah. So I don't think Varun needs to clarify. He just like write down.
Okay, well let's listen to CX and see how it goes.
Okay, I need you to put these in order and talk about anything you did not.
Okay. An absence of something.
One more thing to know. I think while I was watching the video, like Jackson looked at the judge like a lot. So like he could tell from the judge's perception. Like when he was responding to the theory spikes, he was just like, I would say like 70% of the time he was looking at the judge and 30% of the time he was looking at his flow, which is really powerful. Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yep. On the RBI, I made the norming argument, but I put it on the app. Okay.
So blue X is what you read?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if I read the analytic under. So there you go.
Right?
Yep.
Status of KL?
Unconditional. Unconditional.
Unconditional. Okay. Yeah. And which comes first, theory or K?
Theory.
Why?
I don't make those arguments, but I will prioritize reading CX theory.
Okay. Why does CX check these sort of issues?
Well, I mean, presumably you'd read an inter in the 1AR. Like, this is distinct from a shift on advocacy, as far as that weighing isn't there, right?
What is a theory spike?
A theory spike?
Why do you reject?
I say specifically reject paradigmatic arguments in the AC.
Why are these specific to the AC?
and the two analytics, did you listen to them?
What are they?
Sure. The subpoint A was that, let me get my hat. Well, you just write clash on the theory level, because instead of engaging the interact and questioning whether or not your practice is good, you're always incentivized to exclude it with extensions of app arguments.
Sure.
The subpoint B is that you chill checking abuse, because you create a huge opportunity cost to initiating theory, which is you have to go through a wall of app spikes, which means your world proliferates abusive and unfair strategies.
Okay. Alright, so what is the text of your interpretation?
Sure. The text of my interpretation,
Is this...
I read everything up there, and then I said, you cannot read, and then I read from the text of the AC, starting from, I'll clarify in CX.
Why is this offense?
Why is this offense?
As opposed to just a
It's an offensive interpretation that is prohibitive of the arguments you make in the app.
Why
If you want to have the debate that might interpret the counter-interp, I will gladly engage you and beat you in that debate in the NR.
Okay, but explain to me now why.
Sure, because it's explicitly prohibitive and indicts your practice as having severe harms
What
and
is the
negative
offense
strategies.
to the plaintiff that says that making the argument is bad, as opposed to just you not having to check the cross-examination?
All the arguments about strat skew, loss of theoretical ground, CX time wasted.
Right, these are reasons why you shouldn't have to check in CX. Why is it
Brune, that's the same with any theory show, right?
Right,
Any
so maybe
theory
any theory
interpretation
show
derives
is
its
legitimate,
offense why your
justified.
practice is bad. And
Okay.
and first of all, it shows that on the standards level. Second, the correct way to delineate whether or not a shell is offensive is by showing your practice is not bad, not by having to read and answer the argument is bad. So I think your understanding of offensive
So what is the
interpretation
violation? When do I require you to do anything?
Well, even if you mean the first part, I explicitly said you cannot read the AC spike.
Cool.
So
So what is
I,
the abuse to reading the
the
spike?
abuse in the AC is you allow for advocacy shift, you cause a deficit in CX time.
Yes, these are reasons why my spike is a terrible norm for debate.
Yeah,
My
that
question
is the
why
abuse.
is it
That
case
is the abuse
that
in any
me
theory
saying
show.
that
Have you been
that-
debating for the last 4 years, Varun?
Okay, you're not answering my question.
Yeah, I will
I
answer.
understand that if I violate the first two planks, then your shell is offensive, but you said I didn't. So why is
No,
making
you
a
did.
particular claim about a CX abusive?
You asked me to check theory and interpreting cross
When did I
examination.
ask you to check them? Why did I require you to check them?
Varun, like this is arbitrary. As long as you violate the plank, if you violate any plank of my interpretation, all the offense links back to every single plank.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'll engage you on this debate in the NR.
Okay, so Varun's CX, other than the first question about the status of the CP, was also entirely focused on theory.
Sure.
So that indicates that Varun thinks it's much more likely that the 2NR is going to go hard for theory than it will for the K.
Yeah, exactly. Jackson even clarified that theory comes first.
Right, and I think Varun's follow-up that why doesn't this bite your CX check shell is a really good one.
Oh, okay, yeah. What was
But-
Jackson's response?
Jackson's response was there's a difference between your advocacy and weighing, which I sort of think is BS, but Varun doesn't really push him on that.
Okay.
Notice how Jackson perceptually here is very dominant.
Yeah, Jackson was like, if you want to make the argument that my shell is like counter-interpret, like that's fine.
Like-
I'll gladly engage you on that debate and beat you on it.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, he's like just stepping his foot down.
Yeah, like please run it. I
Yeah.
would love to have this debate with you.
Sure.
Right? I think also like Jackson saying stuff like Varun, like have you been debating for the last 4 years? Right? Is a little bit mean,
Yeah.
but it's also like to the point that like, look, this is how theory offense works.
Sure.
Right? I think Varun should have isolated individual aspects of the inter and been like, okay, let's go through the first plank of this inter. I don't understand how I meet it. Right? And
I think it was strategic for Jackson to put the exact text of what Varun's Spike was saying at the end.
right, because
Yeah.
there's no way now that Varun meets it. But
But he
Varun can try to say that the first two planks on the shell were offensive, and the last plank isn't really offensive.
Sure, yeah.
That there's no abuse from reading the spike,
Mhm.
which I don't know is a good argument, but it is an argument Varun can seemingly want to make, and it perhaps may make. So let's talk about the 1AR. If you're the 1AR, what would you do?
There's really so there's 3 options. I can uplayer via theory, but Jackson's strategy seemed pretty fair. I can. So it's a question of whether I'm gonna bite the nib and then win both theory and the K, or just theory and the RBI. I think winning theory and the K is more probable for me than winning theory and the RBI. I would assume that Jackson is really prepped on that debate, and then he'll be less willing to engage with K. Plus, like all the different arguments that he's making on the RBI. I may have to spend a little more time on the K, but not much.
So essentially, we could do like the 2AR that Rom gave in quarters at TSC the year before, where he just bit the bullet and tried to get the debate back to substance.
Yeah, but this is a little problematic for the 1AR because this shows that the 1AR only has one way out, the AC.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Varun wants to do that. So perhaps another thing Varun could do is try to collapse the debate down to substance while also introducing a new shell that he could weigh against the CX check shell.
Yeah, that was my first strategy, but I wouldn't know exactly what interp I would be.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that an interp about like perhaps Ned can only have one pre-fiat out. Like you can't read both K and theory.
Sure.
Or like if you read K and theory, you have to weigh between them in the speech itself. Or if you read a K, you have to specify the status of the K in the NC itself. Or I don't know. Or if you
yeah, like Jackson's strategy wouldn't violate that many shells.
yeah, exactly. So this one end is not super abusive.
Right.
Now,
It's strategic, but not abusive.
yeah, it's strategic but not abusive. So I think that a good 1AR would be maybe 30 to 45 seconds of a new shell to force the 2NR to commit to it.
Oh,
a minute and a half on CX checks, and probably a minute and a half on the K.
Oh, now I realize how good a new shell is because I thought I had to win paradigm issues, but I can just cross apply the paradigm issues. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If I can just cross apply out, I would definitely tie it up later.
Okay.
Or I can engage on the simulator.
So, question: in terms of engaging the CX checks debate, would you want to try to leverage the AC, or would you just kick the AC arguments on theory and just start new in the 1AR?
I think I would.
Like, would you try to go for reasonability, given how much ink Jackson had on that debate?
No, I would want to restart in the 1AR. I don't want.
So you'd concede competing interps, reject the debater, and just go hard for beating the shell.
Yeah.
Okay. I tend to
that-
agree with that. I think.
I think that puts me at too much time. I both have to extend my own argument and respond to like so many responses that Jackson put.
Right,
And
and then
plus
also engage a debate that I haven't even started to engage yet, which
Right.
was the CX debate.
Right.
Okay, cool. So let us see then what the 1AR does. Okay, so let's listen to the 1AR.
The order is a new op, his interpretation, bottom half, specifically on his reject spike stuff, and then the captain. the original in the affirmative for potential advocacy shift after the shift of the current piece violation of a preemptive CS short argument based on advocacy shift that are not yet occurring. You not isolate a single instance of rejection from advocacy standards, policy, and ground. The only answer to advocacy shift also provide with potentially not the that's terrible government that also being warranted by not verifiable argument. Guarantees three stars in order copy cannot be backlogged to use the drop debater. Policy guarantees fairness even if ground on action help play into good quality. Second topic education. My two definition of business topic education to the chances of here debate ever occurs. In my role, the child only brings the shift occurs. I don't shift advocacy than it is already. It's unlikely. You still completely no chances. And no theory based on your depth and no third. It's my child policy of solving the abuse. Even the children are theory checks. The children shall after the shift occurs more persuasive based on actual verifiable argument. It's the CS solver often does mean to be found in gaps in butter. Talk about fairness education is butter. Talk about dog debater continuation from the argument. No argumentation probably one of the reasons here game over because abusing substance to be over probably being a better debater. The people saying that's the way you research is I'm going to you don't have access to yourself anymore. The people can determine to the job is called to question but those disney as a form of argument and patch response by the meta-theoretical with show me the first now. You're showing. First time your attribution, I don't ask you to do anything across examination. I say I will explicitly defend my advocacy, ask you to do things unconditionally, which means it's not required for you to do anything across examination. Now, the counter-interpretation, I can have this question that I say, and the first two points of your interpretation, I say explicitly that I do not require you to have it. It's all 100% your office, also your interpretation in OCI, it's all 100% your office, also your interpretation in OCI, because your interpretation why I expect that not for me. Not reason why you asking to do that. The only reason why you asking is a bad thing. Not a question why we reading a particular form of argument out that it comes from not something education, net of my interpretation. You can see that on the atmosphere is an opportunity comes from education. Devastating facts, and you can see that education always fairness. So it's not that argument that it is the only lasting impact of it. Because substance education and risk of substance education, risk of voting here, net of my interpretation, determined proclamation means come first. Now you're on the line first. You see states here in fact you're never about what you defend against. You know, there's no chance that I explicitly say what I'm allowed to shift into one AC. I will defend these two advocates because it's all I'm going to say. You can say excuse your theoretical ground. No, it is better to turn this better stuff from the theoretical ground than work my interpretation because you are forced to ask me to get clear violation. The more qualitative elected with a theory, but if you can generate some sort of shifting that, you also say education because it's valid cross examination. Even if valid cross examination, not unique, you need to wait and ask it. If you want nothing, see, I would not need to wait and ask if you get a cross examination, no, you need to be that nothing on cross examination tells you nothing, and nothing you have to say in cross examination, you can say in touch time wherever you want. Because I see that I will unconditionally concede to these particular theory interpretations like full res or drop the debater, because you need to tell your cross examination and means that I wait. Now, but yeah, there's no principal reason why your reject spike arguments applies to the app as opposed to the neg. Your first argument is the least west side, but obviously, and the western show legitimate theory. Obviously, there's show legitimate theory engagement because you have multiple spikes and things like no RBIs, which means that you're also reject those spikes as well. If you want to say that leads to a chilling effect, but it's obviously a huge opportunity to talk about engaging theory first. This means you leads to network theory engagement as well. So the theory is why the neg can do it. She doesn't reject all the one spikes, why, for example, you use the competing interest for reasonability. At that point, so there's no reason to reject or there's no reason to vote on a particular form of spike, which means that either way these arguments apply to your spikes as well. So no validity extension of the theory, but these arguments apply to your now, the capital. First, you say the capital is always that. First, you have to reject capital every instance. You'll turn starting to solve the first solve the visual link, first starting with every single instance is not possible. You link yourself to a computer, probably things like capital corporation. If rejecting every instance is possible, then choose the negative term number one. Now, the testimony to the government, you say that you're testing about that. You can see the number three, the better working the evidence of location, the kind of density, the authority, the association, the complexity of oppression, and that's to address people experience the oppression, that is logic funny. Well, the better is a recognize. We should consider reverse effect. Just our line on asking suicide, that's the issue. You guys can synthesize the opinion of this way. There's a more term livelihood. There's an opening to the term sort of political strategy. In case terms of case, none of us are getting able to decide this issue. Since we're equally perfectly different, let's actually see what they say. Academics are often privileged with association of stats and living experience, we might have looked for authority. And the first of political strategy, current town calling for stability, bigger placement, and stable change, versus in the capital systems that we solve prosper. Moral religion has control of reality, will be a simple naked religion, not like the sound of Bible, political justice, not what it means, to overthrow capitalism, and that's not what you let in our religion. Capitalism must cause many characters, the limit to be a so to stability. One system, it should be guaranteed upside down, not the constitution, or actually the education system, using the first constitution test, the less one thinking about where superiority of capital will give it to united human security capitalism, with a human heart. Finally, speak the argument of, but I didn't really need that. Okay, that's all.
So 3 minutes, you remove the cross application of the spikes interview?
Yeah.
So Varun. Actually, it's fine.
Okay. So the first thing is technically Varun is also super fast.
Yeah, he gets through a lot of arguments.
Now, I thought that he was so fast in the interp that he read in the 1AR that I just didn't catch a lot of the arguments. Like, I didn't catch the reasons AF abuse outweigh neg abuse. It's also because I'm on a computer and I flow faster on paper. I also didn't catch all the reasons, all the impacts off of qualitative round.
Yeah, I didn't catch. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think it may have been worth Varun's time to slow down a tiny bit here, just so he can be sure that your judge catches everything, right? Because I think judges feel hesitant to give AFs leeway on this, like when the 2AR gets magically clearer on this debate. On the other hand, though, Ben did not say slow.
Right. Yeah.
And so because Ben did not say slow, it seems like he's catching everything Varun's saying. So, absent Ben saying slow, I think what Varun did is fine. So that's the first technical note. The second technical note is I think Varun really made a mistake by he wasted almost 30 to 40 seconds of this 1AR by going for this argument against the spikes, and that undercut the time he could have spent putting more line by line on the CX checks debate, as well as more line by line on the cap K.
Yeah, he said the impact would be to like reject the arguments, like why reject like competing interps and stuff, but that means that he wouldn't access that same thing for his show either.
And I think Varun recognized that at the end and said, "Kick the arguments about the spikes.
Yeah.
I didn't really mean them."
Yeah, sure.
Right? And so that strategically was a mistake by Varun because that was almost 45 seconds of argumentation.
I don't think it was that long, but it was definitely quite a bit of time.
It was quite a bit of time because he transitioned from the CX checks to that layer and then back to the cap K. So there was also 2 transitions he could have saved himself. And then there was also the last 5 seconds of the speech where he said, "I didn't really mean it."
Yeah.
So I think really if you timed it up and added it, it definitely was close to at least 30, if not closer to 40. And that's a ton of time. So substantively, I think the weakest part of this speech are the responses to the theoretical ground standard.
Yeah, he like grouped them without responding to specific ones, which the 1AR could do, but I don't know. He's not putting enough ink on the theoretical ground.
Yeah, and I think the problem is his only response is better theoretical ground because he has more clear violations, right? But that doesn't engage like the sidestepping argument that Jackson's making, nor does it engage the abuse becomes more innocuous argument. And this is sort of inexcusable because this is something that the 2NR is going to sit on, right?
Yeah.
So the line by line on the actual standards is really important.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Varun is really dropping the ball here in the 1AR. He line by lines value of CX pretty well. He doesn't really line by line advocacy shift and theoretical ground very well. Right? The advocacy shift isn't about this particular round. It's not like he'll shift his advocacy in this round. It's about you change your advocacy depending on who you're debating.
Sure. Yeah.
That you become overly concessional in cross-examination against good theory debaters and don't become concessional at all against bad theory debaters. So, this 2NR, then, has the first decision it needs to make is it going to just kick the CX shell, beat back the meta theory, and sit on the cap K?
I don't think that Jackson will do that.
Well, it's not a question of will, but rather should.
Okay, let's think about that.
So, he could do 2 minutes on the meta theory shell that the 1AR beats, and then go for 4 minutes of the K. That is an option.
But, the thing that's problematic is that Jackson conceded that theory comes first. Which
right, so he'd give himself a nib.
Yeah. It'd be a nib for him.
Sure, I agree.
So I think it's more strategic just to not go for the cap K. Because, even if that's, the substantive out in this part, but then wouldn't, it's oh, theory debate's muddled. Let me evaluate substance.
Good, so knowing your judge is important.
Yeah.
Ben's not going to do that. So, maybe a better 2NR would be maybe 3.5 minutes on CX checks, 2 minutes on the meta theory, and then 30 seconds weighing.
Sure, yeah. What were the weighing arguments that we made? That first is meta theory, right? And then that I wrote weight theory.
I honestly didn't get any of them.
Yeah, okay.
They were so fast, I just have written A, B, C, call into question, logistics of question to question.
Okay. I wrote weight theory doesn't mean you get to access, but I don't know what that means. Yeah.
Okay, so the 2NR first needs to decide what it's going to do with the K. And it needs to make that decision recognizing that it said theory comes first. So one layer it most certainly needs to resolve before getting to the K is meta theory. And then the 2NR then needs to decide how it's going to split time between meta theory and the theory shell he read.
I think Varun's responses on the K were good, but definitely not unbeatable. Like I think Jackson can definitely come ahead on the K debate, but I don't think it's the most strategic option to go for.
Agreed. So it's a question of, would the K become a red herring? And in a smart 2AR, it wouldn't, because the 2AR would just collapse to meta theory. Right? So a red herring is only possible if the 2AR has to go for that option.
Sure, yeah.
But in this case, it doesn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's see what the 2AR does then.
It's going to be critique, starting on the links with an overview. Then it will be his new shell and CX checks. Everyone good to go?
CX checks. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, then my shell, CX checks.
Everyone ready? Everyone ready? Brent made a gaming concession on the bottom of mutual analysis. He can see that they're always mutually exclusive with the app setting out of mutual though. If the end point of the capital system is the idea of wage labor, any world where we have wage labor is always capital between the elements. You can never perm the extending argument above the coming at the bottom of mutual. This means that a perm is impossible because it's mutually exclusive between two can't perm you both use the app as a political method, reject capital. You never reject capital for the actions. Comes for your arguments. A on strength and link. You can see the truth. You can never make a permutation. B on severity. Even if it's not a mutual exclusivity argument, it's a disadvantage to perm. So the perm you never solve if you are always capital free. You have the most severe argument. See it creates a root of solving your permutation and never actually be effective. It doesn't matter if moral authorities are supportive of the avenues of perm. All of the work well in the critique itself. Additionally, mine also working with the politicals and overview. Remember the alternative that is not a rejection of capitalism. It's a movement towards social design. Called all this events like political against Shucker is a direct analysis of how we need to reframe our economy to be more towards a socialist system as a whole, which means I want all of its benefits to political. So he can see this mutual exclusive. That fits out the perm. Roll the ballot comes first, which means I'm the only one with office, okay? Remember, all his offensive arguments are only net benefit to the firm, even though by that. Extending out some codes like class code, the capitalist working back in Shunter, extend Shunter I, may movement towards socialism on, its permutation, office epistemic limitations are first, you can see two net possession on the AC, one your office are talking how we resist capitalism, they're just talking about the living wage, this is term that remember then, when I have the numbers, we got before I address the TV cycle makes it blow second, we can all say the capitalist bad, no, we need that, no, we need that moral authority, additionally that disadvantage of the permutation, we make capitalism more palliative in the world, because people use more failures, we will never address capital system, so the only thing I need to do is answer is new shell. The good thing that that shell is atrocious counter-interpretation. The only new shell that I read that is the negative potential activity check is a CX check shell that solves for almost all of these because it means the only shell I can read with a strategy standard, activity standard is CX check between the so I call all benefits of interpretation on your quality ground argument, turn use for quality ground argument, meaning that we'll be able to check with the potential beats, otherwise it's huge, that's the activity usable in there, and energy that's all for your advocacy can still be ambiguous. You never know whether or not you check. Second, you destroy substantive classes. I call quality even further. Even if you're not physically checking, having shaking gaps, you destroy my ability to link terms in the outside. You have the ability to check the potential beats. Three, term competing interpretations is the reason why you have to have these arguments because it means that we have to talk about that. The potential three beats of arguments, even if you are not actually beats of arguments, you have the frame nature of quality ground that you have to see the competing interpretations. We always have to evaluate strategy plays for. There's no abuse of it. You can show how the strategy to see we shifting gaps between laws where you read the counter interpretation I may read the five minutes and my absolute I don't shift my absolute. You can always say the ground argument's fifth point is that CX doesn't link to your quality ground argument. CX explains how the abuse doesn't come from a potential change in later speeches. CX is about changing in CX. Then, my strategy claim is not the after shifted arguments in later speeches. It is by virtue by CX checking that is a direct change because he adopts my interpretation. This means that even if he has links to other forms of strategy, it doesn't link to the stats you talked about in my theory shell. There's a very clear differentiation. And even if it does, that's a very minor net benefit, which is outweighed clearly by all the odds coming out of my theory shells. Then there's topic education argument. As an overview to all the topic education debate, Varun made again in concession to the fairness voter, except for my fairness voter that theory education is as good as topic education. You, but no, it's theory talks about what we're doing within the round. You can call for the fairness voter, except 75% means there's no trade-off between theory education and topic education. They are equal regardless of what we want. There's more theory topic education. There's no mathematical topic education. On topic education turn you destroy topic education by allowing people to shift their attitudes to play the choice by looking at the clash your position. Secondly, a marginal benefit of topic education. Third, you can see that CF checks is bad one by this show the prerequisite topic education arguments. So you that you can check reasonability, which you got first. Then go to your argument by your interpretation comes to my interpretation. That's it. Over these arguments, this is just indicted by scrapping standard by when it gets to my other shelf on the standard subtopic. These might come first. Second, we can rate between link differentials. He has shown that it's impossible to engage in the CF checks. This is a little harder. My CF show as well as no choice, like you never win in a world where there's normal CF checks. Overview on the CF checks today. First question to ask yourself is whether or not my interpretation is authentic. 3 ones. First, my interpretation is often correct across the otherwise the apple will be the only axis of the theory. All my interpretation and some of these counter-iterations that use like conceptual true sites that need further place against them. Second, to the recourse of myself, no axis of recourse will be no center to read. You get to be theory spice with I. The only way to answer theory spice is with theory, which you can see from the Jonathan Bader argument. You said he offers theory immediately on theory spice classify the warrant from Jonathan Bader. Additional strength link, you can know one my counter-interpretation for my extrapolation interpretation because it's more consistent with the interpretation. How would you offer theory? You say the net benefit in his counter-interpretation theory education. You have already conceded that topic education, theory education is as important as topic education. There's never a trade-off because that's the matter on his IME. His IME makes no sense that I really read from the text of AC. You can't read that AC is fine. Even if there's a little less abuse in the world, there's still a clear violation because he will adopt interpretations by CX by shell explains why it's also bad for the negative. It's really asking people to accept interpretations of the world as CX checks. So go, that's the standard of theoretical ground. Extend the analysis of theoretical ground. You destroy theoretical ground because you will just waste my time and you'll never, it's unclear what checking means. You always theory. Also, you encourage graders to hide these views I can have theory in. Or you say it's better to be forcing me to do so. No, you say you're not forcing me to check my views. Second turn is always worse. You can see my standards that even if I'm asking my views, you'll just never concede to my interpretation, which you concede on the standards level 3 is all being a disadvantage. As an overview on the standard rate here at the ground that weighs all claims of substantive education because one is the most severe impact of I and one is the on theory that I cannot engage around. Also, your meta theory shell really shows that I can't engage on theoretical layers, so I call your meta theory arguments first. Also, at least the shell and strength, like you only have mine really goes to the ground line. No person knows that the CX extends the obstacle steps. So that's that way time asking about people from my like yours. You say some of you because you always ask, but no, it is unique because with foresight time you can talk about interpretations. Then you say you'll defend whatever you want, but you will kill CX time unique conceptualists by talking about it. And CX always wants to talk education because CX is the only unique education debate. If there's any way from losing CX time, that is a unique form of clash. Also key to different salvation is with that means that's just the comparative to the various that ways. It shall be the question of what we can do with that.
Okay, so prior to the 2NR, we said the first thing the neg needs to decide is what it's going to do with the K. Neg decided in this round it's going for it.
Sure.
And so by going for it, he now has given himself... So in terms of order of operations, the first domino that needs to be addressed as the judge is the meta theory.
Yeah, okay, so the strategic value of the K comes in if Varun doesn't go for the meta theory, he still has to resolve substance, which means that he has to win the K.
Right, exactly. So if Varun just goes for defense on CX checks, or an IME, and then the K. Right. So strategic value is Jackson thought perhaps there was some question of whether or not he would win the CX shell debate, and so he wanted to give himself another way out.
Sure.
Okay. Now, the strategic disadvantage is that the 2AR can make the 2NR much shorter now by taking out of the K.
Yeah, but Jackson didn't spend much time. I would say around 1:30.
Yeah, he spent about a minute and a half on the K. He got through it quickly, and he got through it efficiently as well, and effectively, I think.
Also, like he exploited Varun's concessions really well. I remember, like, I put a mental note, like, on the argument that that's theoretical education is sufficient to get substantive education, and then now it just like blew up.
It blew up. Yeah, exactly. That means the drop that Jackson made on education versus fairness is not as important.
Right.
Or the value of that drop has decreased significantly.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first big thing to note. Second big thing to note is the technical skill of Jackson. That 2NR was pretty fantastic in terms of tech, right? It was fast, it was clear, and it got through so much. Also notice how Jackson was really good at melding the big picture and the line by line, right? Like, he got to CX checks and says, the overview is the first question you need to ask yourself is whether my interp is offensive. There's 3 reasons why it is. First this, second, third this. Yeah. Then on the line by line, when he got to the standards, he says the overview on the standards is theoretical ground outweighs everything else. So notice how he's doing big picture on each line-by-line issue.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That's something you can learn from. I think giving this to an R again on theory is really useful to try to see if you can get through it as well as Jackson did. Because Jackson put a lot of ink on Varun's shell. Like a ton of ink. And I think the only mistake Jackson made is not sitting harder on theoretical ground. I think.
Yeah. I think the way you explained it to me, he could have explained it a lot, especially when like there were swirling debaters who always try to avoid concessions in CX.
Right, and I think that the time he could have spent there was the time he spent on value of CX. Like I think the 15 seconds at the end of the twin R going for value of CX, though it was meant to stretch the AF thin by forcing the AF to also go for value of CX, it would have been more useful to just sit on theoretical ground.
Oh, you think so?
I think so, because I think it would have made the theoretical ground standard abuse story much clearer.
Okay. But I think that education versus fairness way, right? He still wants to access internally to education.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough call. I see the value of that, but I think that he's not responding to a lot of the line by line on the value of CX. Right. So I think Varun and the 2R will easily win the value of the CX standard, and that means that he would have probably gotten more bang for his buck out of theoretical ground. Okay. Additionally, the argument he's going for theory education is as good as substantive education really is game over on the education debate.
Right.
So he doesn't need another link into education. You have to analyze the necessity of do you need that second link.
Right.
And in this case, Jackson definitely doesn't.
What was the warrant that theory education is just as good?
It's not really extended than 2 and R. I don't remember what Jackson's exact warrant is. Let's see if I have it flowed.
I definitely flowed that on my flows. Yeah, under the fairness voter.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no trade-off.
Yeah, I had that flowed too. I don't really have a warrant flowed. I think that's something Varun should have probably pushed Jackson on, but he did not.
Sure.
So the 1AR made a damning drop for itself on the theory debate, which puts the 2AR in an interesting position.
Sure.
The 2R sort of goes for everything, right? We think a potentially better 2R would have been sitting on just meta theory and theory, but I guess Jackson has some concern about whether or not the I-meet would be sufficient. And so if the I-meet is sufficient, then the cap K becomes relevant. Or if Varun beats the substance of the CX checks debate, the cap K becomes relevant. So, now it's a question of what will the 2AR go for? If you were the 2AR, what would you do?
It's okay, so I definitely had to beat back Jackson's shell, but it's a question of whether I want to go for the K or I want to go for my shell. I think Jackson's putting way more ink on my meta theory shell, so I think I'll just I'll bite the nib and go for the K and responding to his shell.
So you're gonna go for CX checks in the K?
Because I feel like Jackson's putting way more ink on the meta theory than the K.
Okay, I don't think that's a bad 2AR. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that's a ballsy 2AR. That's a very gutsy decision.
What would your decision be?
I'm not sure. I think that Jackson sort of handles the meta theory shell pretty well.
Wait, so what was the interp on the meta theory shell?
The interp was that Neg can't read theory shells that indict abuse that hasn't occurred yet.
And then Jackson just limited that a lot with his counter interp. That makes sense.
And I think Jackson could have made an argument on CX checks saying that like CX checks is the one shell where you need to be able to preempt the abuse because the abuse happens by reading the argument and the abuse happens with how you shift in CX itself.
Sure.
Right? I also think Jackson should have read like arguments that like that's silly because that requires me to prove the abuse. And then oftentimes it's too late by the time the abuse has been
I think
proven.
that he could have always also proved the abuse with the question in CX, like shifts out of the municipality. Oh, you're biting that pen, dude.
Oh shit, sorry. Go ahead, what were you saying?
Oh, that's nasty.
Whatever, we'll watch it. What were you saying?
That he can prove the abuse from CX by the municipality T argument that if I read T that he said he will violate it during if this is conception, but like because of his argument he will just shift out of my violation.
Right. And I mean, regardless, I think the number 3 argument about competing interps solving that this is a reason we care about these arguments no matter what as a framing issue is damning. I think Varun's argument really needed to interact with competing interps, and it doesn't do so.
Sure.
Okay, so let's listen to what the 2AR does.
Speaking of stake in the last speech is going for the capitalism came out sensitivity of losing the permutation. I mean, trying to definitively winning the captain, then you easily vote if there's a risk of an I mean, a risk of the fact that violation is not solved, and it's a pretty easy out of something like you said. Number 3, the fair version of the ethical implementation competitive setting that authority can better assess the complexities of issues like oppression and methods to address it. People who think the fact that they can fighting with better, I recognize that you consider the fact just on a math, come on, I think this is like the opinion of you consider the more for the promotion that is pretty important. You see the third is interesting. The point that the permit is not people the terms that do the after reject happen every other interesting to solve a residual link to the app. You can see that every instance of rejection of capitalism is literally impossible because you link yourself. You have a computer to restart capitalist country, and rejection of every instance is impossible. That's a huge net benefit to that will have. You would never solve your own impact. Also, it was not from the rejection in the instance. The permit is only a marginal residual link to the app, so it typically outweighs spread of the link is decidedly when you consider that every instance is literally impossible, which means they all cannot happen, which means that very risk of solvency, then I want you to consider the framing issue for all issues of oppression. Remember, capitalism is bracketed under issues of oppression. Reasons why clever bad or reasons why oppression is bad. The problem is that I don't think that response on the living wage. Go through your response. First, say that external defense of the living wage offense or addressing issues of living wage non-issues. The cap no arguments about synthesizing oppression in general and capitalism is a form of oppression. So the living wage offense is a better these moral authorities are better suited to address associations. We wanted you say the palliative because whatever actually challenge cap, that resumes cap is bad. You can see that framing is that issues of oppression are synthesized by moral experts. Not even you have to the guard, you solve the internally the guard, not going to the guard. The question is whether or not issues of oppression, the issues of the role of the doctor be synthesized by moral experts or by Jackson. And the problem is you consider you're blinded by the competitive incentives means you automatically affirm that they're better able to synthesize whether or not cap is bad in the first place because they endorse the app, not the result. Now, theory. Decisive winning of the case and winning on terms of leaking. Remember, you have conceded in the last piece that I never required you to check anything in cross-examination. You should filter negative offense through that lens. It means if I saw a large portion of your research immediately running out of stress of LinkedIn, you have conceded the argument on CX checks that there's no question of you asking anything in cross-examination at all because that will automatically concede to the interpretation you can ask. And fact, number 2, you have conceded. You say that way because it's too theory. Your theory the argument is contingent on you having to ask something in cross-examination. My interpretation was that I will automatically concede to these 2 things. It means I cannot think you can solve 100% of your views. It specifies exactly what I will concede to and not concede to. It means there's no CX checks. I think that all these relate to your argument on better establishment of theory ground. So it comes for a system that it leads to a better system, the term that it could lead to a better establishment of theory ground. That it leads to these offense on the theory base, contestation or winning a theory base is the decisive victory in the case, probably enough. In addition, your terms will rely on the fact that you must check things in cross-examination. That's everything with K. But obviously, you did the requirement framing that you've lost the interpretation on that now later. You've also considered that it's better establishment of theory ground and more verifiable theory in terms of a better theory violation. That if you consider arguments why it comes first. You say that you never consider theory ground is better, that you classify a number of arguments full into explicit cross-application rather than anything else. The problem is that you consider that you are not required to check anything cross-examination. You will violate of theory ground because you don't know what interpret. But obviously, my current is install that particular portion of your offense because that explicitly say what I will and will not concede to. We can concede in a powerful defense that there was never an issue of checking against the person. Run your time simply. There is no 2NR, which means strength link comparison is the only possible way you can vote on. Counter-efficient excludes most of your offense. Do you vote out? Go down. Yep.
Jackson.
Yep.
Okay, so the 2AR ended up going for what you said, Kirk, which is beat the K and go for CX checks.
Yeah, but I think it's problem. Well, Varun couldn't have done much, but he basically has no offense thinking about his counter interp, which is
The one offensive argument is that you have better theoretical ground because you have more clear violations.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like his own counter interp takes out his offensive arguments because if it is indeed the case that he will explicitly explain which 2 ones he shifts out of, then you don't have better theoretical ground because your violations basically like you know that the app will shit like see this is CX checks limited to 2 specific issues, which is spec, right? And so you don't have theory violations because he will defend whatever you want him to defend. Other theory violations are not included in the CX checks counter interp.
Wait, I don't understand.
So, sorry, I'm explaining this confusingly. The CX checks, normally the way the turn would work on CX checks is that CX checks in general is good because that means you can always confirm your violation in cross-examination. Right?
Sure.
So, like, let's say the AF does abusive practice B. You can confirm that that is an abusive practice B, and that violation is clear.
Right.
And CX checks forces that, so
Right.
it's better theoretical ground. However, that only makes sense when CX checks applies to all practices. In the case of the counterinterpret, it only applies to the practices that were explicitly listed in the AC.
Right.
So there's no clear violation that's being garnered. There's no increase in clear violation that's being garnered in the world of AF.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand you. Yeah.
I also think this is where we're talking about the 2NR could have sat harder on the theoretical ground standard. The 15-20 seconds there would have been useful for him.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Although I do...
I don't think Jackson responded to the fact that he only gets 2 arguments. I think that Varun exploit like a powerful defensive argument, but it's still defense.
Right, and I think this is where risk of offense becomes a pretty easy place to vote negative on here. Varun tries to leverage that by saying if the debate's close, strength of link means you should just vote on substance. But that's not usually how we conceive of that debate.
Right, exactly. It's like even if someone's wearing, it's like that judge you said that evaluated Pranav versus like Arjun or Akil that it's close debate. I go to substance. Most judges don't evaluate it that way.
Exactly, and so
Varun realized that Hugo is probably losing on theory.
Right, and so Varun does a good job in the 2AR trying to salvage the debate. But I think that had Varun had more ink on the line by line of the standards in the 1AR, this debate would have been easier for the 2AR.
Sure.
Right? So I think Varun should have tried to just bite the bullet and give reasons why CX checks is a good thing.
Okay.
Right? In terms of AF flex, in terms of decreasing theory debates, etc.
But decreasing theory debates is still mitigated by the substantive education argument.
Right, and so Varun really should have responded to that as well.
Exactly.
Cool. So I think the best speech to redo in this round is the 1AR and the 2NR. I think the 1AR should be able to give that 1AR on the CX checks debate in 2 minutes, and it should be comprehensive.
Sure.
And have a lot more line by line. Right? Because Varun reads his shell in about 30 to 45 seconds and spent about a minute to a minute and a half on the CapK. So if you can get through the CX checks debate in 2 minutes, you're golden.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's redo number 1, is getting through the 1AR on the CX checks debate in 2 minutes and having much more ink on the line by line. I think redo number 2 needs to be the 2NR investing a little bit less on meta theory, because meta theory ended up becoming the red herring in this debate, and investing more heavily on the standards debate of the interp. So you should be able to give this 2NR in 4.5 minutes, where you spend about 2:30 to 3 minutes on CX checks and 90 seconds on the meta theory. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions about your redo?
No.
Okay. Cool. So for those of you following along at home, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion and conversation. To recap, the 1AR made a key drop on the theoretical ground versus substantive ground arguments, and so that is a learning lesson to pay more attention to the voter. The 1AR also really put itself at a disadvantage by not putting more ink on the line by line of the standards that the NC shell was. And the 1AR made a strategic mistake by going for the arguments about the spikes at the bottom of the AF. Those are 20 to 30 seconds Varun could have saved and used on the line by line of the CX checks debate. I think the 2NR was pretty good, but the 2NR could have invested better time allocation, a little bit less on the meta theory, which ended up becoming the distractor for the 2NR and the red herring, and a little bit more on the actual standards debate. And so I think the 2NR only really gets to the standards debate of the CX check shell at the last 30 to 45 seconds of the speech, and it should devote at least a minute and a half of the speech to the standards debate.
Sure, yeah.
That's where the round is going to be won or lost. I think the other big picture note to have here is that the 2NR putting its eggs in the basket of the K is a dangerous basket, because the 2AR does a really good job, very much so, muddling that debate up. And so it's sort of hard for a judge to reach an objective decision on this CapK debate without making some type of interventionist decision. So most judges would feel hesitant about resolving that line by line.
Mhm.
Cool?